comment on the channel of the different situations that are going on around the country right now. Just to bring you up to date, there's a lot still going on. There's protests all over the country that are still happening and ongoing, and all around the world for George Floyd's murder. And those men have been charged. Some are out now on bail, and the case is still pending, I guess, until their court cases and stuff come forward to see whether these charges will be pursued. In the middle of all of that, we have some other pressing news that's coming out this week, and I know it's disturbing because it's been on my heart a lot, just a lot of the different things that's going on around the country. A couple of the stories in particular we're going to talk about tonight, which is there's been some hangings or lynchings, something we haven't seen the likes of since 40s, 50s, 60s. And when the stories started to break about these things happening around California, the Attorney General has since been asked to investigate these deaths. When I started hearing about these deaths and reading about them, I was shocked, as many of you are shocked, to hear that lynchings are going on. Historically, lynchings were used as a fear tactic and as a way of murdering black people in the black community by right-wing groups or hate groups like the KKK, and they're happening again. Now, when I first started reading about them, the press or the news or the media or the police were saying that they jumped to the conclusion, the first thing they said is these are suicides, and that they look like suicides. Well, to me, they don't look like suicides. So I want to share a few stories with you and comments on what I've seen so far. I'm going to bring this to you, and I hope that it's clear and that you can see and hear what's going on.
Asked to investigate the death of a young black man who was found hanging from a tree. The initial finding of suicide alarmed the community. Some fear the Wednesday death in Palmdale, some 60 miles north of Los Angeles, could be foul play. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti reports.
Can I also ask that we stop talking about lynching?
At a contentious press briefing, residents in the LA County city of Palmdale demanded an independent investigation into the death of Robert Fuller. The 24-year-old was found hanging from a tall tree branch early Wednesday morning in a public square across from City Hall. Investigators didn't say if a ladder was found nearby.
We sitting here staring at this tree. It don't make no sense.
That's right.
Fuller's sister, Diamond Alexander, along with activists, now demanding answers after they say the sheriff's department rushed to conclusions. For example, in one release, officials said it appears Mr. Fuller tragically committed suicide, even though homicide detectives were still investigating. A second statement released by the city linked Fuller's death to COVID-19 related depression, reading, "Sadly, it's not the first such incident since the COVID-19 pandemic began." But Fuller's sister said he wasn't depressed.
Robert was a good little brother to us. We've been hearing one thing, then we hear another. And we just want to know the truth.
It's the second recent hanging death of a black man in the area. On May 31st, after a night of George Floyd protests, Malcolm Harsh was found hanging from a tree in neighboring San Bernardino County. Officials said there are no signs of foul play, but said detectives were still investigating the cause and manner of death. Meanwhile, demands for an investigation into Fuller's death have gained national attention after tweets by both Senator Kamala Harris and Kim Kardashian went viral. Palmdale officials are now calling for an independent investigation and autopsy. Jonathan Vigliotti, CBS News, Los Angeles.
So this isn't the first time or the first case I've been following these stories a little bit. This isn't the first time or the first case that's happened. And just like he said there, it appears that the justice system are jumping to conclusions. The first thing they'll say is that it's a suicide. But no one's mentioned if there was a ladder involved or a chair involved or how this person hang himself from a tree. It just does, it doesn't make any sense to the families. It doesn't make any sense to anyone how someone could do that. It just doesn't seem feasible. It doesn't seem possible. But these are the things that we're told, and we have to assume that the police and the authorities are telling us the truth on this. It doesn't make any sense. There's a lot going on with the protests. People have been disappearing. People have been murdered. People have been attacked. And in most cases, it comes back once it's been reviewed, once the cameras have been reviewed and the documentation and everything's been reviewed, they come back and say that it was either a right-wing group or it was the police that attacked these individuals and slashed tires or started fires or done all these kind of things. And so they initially tell us one thing and then it leads into another and then another and then another. So I can definitely understand why this family would feel frustrated. I've been mentioning this on Facebook and some other platforms, and it's confusing when you get all of this information and it's twisted and it's changed and it's all moved around and you feel like you're being lied to. And I'm pretty sure that's how the family feels in this situation. We're watching this, but these aren't the only two that surfaced as hangings or lynchings. I'm going to reserve my thoughts on this, but there's only a few organizations that come to mind to me that will have the wherewithal to do this and be able to quietly get away with it. I've been talking to friends and everybody that I can talk with about this new policy trend that's going around about abolishing the police, defunding the police, recreating the police. I have some strong convictions and feelings about that. But I have to reserve my view on this because I have a long view when it comes to the police in the African American community. I don't trust the police. I never have. I don't trust that the media and the mayors and the DAs and the politicians and the attorneys and all, I don't trust these people. I never have. And so it doesn't make me feel good or warm and fuzzy when I'm being lied to. And I think these families are being lied to. I think that someone very organized, someone who has the ability to be invisible, as our police has the ability to be invisible, they have the power to suppress information, have the power to confuse the public, mislead the public. I think it's groups like this that have the power to do something like this. And this would be horrendous because I feel like everything that's been happening recently leads me to believe that the police and other groups have been trying to instigate black people to start targeting the police with violence. People are out there peacefully protesting right now, as they should, and they have a right to do so. But I feel like all of these events are building and building and building, and I think the tension is there. It's a powder keg. It's designed so that someone will take that next step and start targeting and harming police and their families. And that's not where I think this protest should lead. I can't tell people how to protest or what to do, but I do think that there's a group of people out there trying to convince everyone that black people are bad and black people will resort to violence. And if given the opportunity and if the circumstances fit the need, if pushed in a corner, of course they will. Anyone would, to defend themselves. And I think right now, these lynchings, these hangings are the next step to instigate that type of violence. So that was a story I wanted to bring to you so that you could be thinking about it and following closely. That's something I think you need to follow closely. Also, I read a story where a young lady, she's 19 years old. I had it on my desktop here. 19-year-old protester went missing. Beautiful young lady went missing for a few days, and then she was found dead. Okay, she had tweeted or something like that saying that she was assaulted, and I guess no one heard from her after that. She went missing, and then she ended up dead. They're investigating that now to see what happened to this young lady. Now, if George Floyd's murder wasn't enough, this young man, Rashard, down in Atlanta, who was killed for sleeping in his car, Rashard Brooks, if that wasn't enough, if this young lady's murder wasn't enough, and these two young men being hung was not enough to get everybody's attention to see in the last few weeks that there are some serious issues with police violence and police brutality towards black people. Just in this stretch of 2 or 3 weeks, you've seen over and over again, black people end up dead at the hands of the police. Ahmaud Arbery was a different situation. The guy who killed him was formerly investigator. He wasn't a police officer at the time. He wasn't even licensed to be a police officer. But they attacked him and they killed him. So throughout this whole 2-3 weeks since then, months since then maybe, you've seen death after death after death after death. And this should really stir something inside of us to make us think that, wait a minute, something's happening. Something's not right with the police. See, because in our community, we see this all the time. But in the white community, the police protects and they serve. That's what they're designed to do. They protect and serve. But they're not supposed to just protect and serve in the white community. They're supposed to protect and serve in all communities. No one is supposed to walk away from these altercations and end up dead. So we have to look at this. People are being stirred about this, and rightfully so. What I want to do right now is the conversation I want people to start having is, what if this was done by, say, a right-wing group? What if they went out, decided to kill someone? Very possible. They have the means. They could do that. That's one way to look at it. Now I want to ask something that may not be as plausible. What if the police did it? Now, before you say or jump to a defense and say, well, that's not possible. They couldn't possibly kill someone. They wouldn't dare do something like that. Well, our history tells us otherwise, Many years ago, the police were involved, if not complicit, in many lynchings around this nation. It's not unheard of. And when I talk to my brother and I talk to different people and friends, sometimes they think I'm way out there. And I understand that. But I want to ask the question again. Think about it. If a police officer throws a black man into a car, no one thinks anything of it. If he drives off, nobody thinks anything of it. If they see a black man in the back of a police car somewhere, they don't think anything of it. If they find some remote location and kill this man, to many of us, the police is invisible. We don't think about what they have going on over there. We're not thinking that way. I want you to start thinking this way. I want you to at least start looking carefully, being aware of this. This young lady that went missing was 19 years old. Some of you have kids. I'm saying this as clearly as I can say this. Know where your children are. Know where you are. Who would they trust? Kids would trust the police. They'd come. If the police asked them to come, they would come. Why? We're taught to trust the police when we're younger. We're not taught to be suspicious of the police. Police is supposed to be there to protect us. Be careful of that, because this day and time, things have changed. So, as we follow these stories, I want you to consider that it might just not be this way out there nutcase right-wing group. It might be a person in our very own police. The last couple of years, we've seen that the police are affiliated with these types of groups. So it's not unheard of that someone would go and use their power to do that. One more thing before I let you go. About this abolish the police. There's been cities that have abolished the police, have defunded the police and changed their police. And they have structured it in such a way where when they call 911, depending on the situation, a particular person or group of people go out. They're not always gun, badge, police showing up there. And I'm all for that. So I want you guys to really look at that and see if that might be something that you can pursue with your cities. And I'm not about this reform police thing, because people have been reforming the police for many years. And look where we are now. The same guys that are supposed to be reformed are out there choking and killing people. So I don't believe these guys can be reformed. I believe they need to be fired, and I believe they need to be replaced as needed. And I think their records need to be scrutinized. I think they need to be trained. I think these forces need to be started all over. And even if that means hiring a security firm that's trained in these areas so that they're not out there randomly killing people in the streets, well, that's what we need to do. So I want you to look at that and be open-minded about how that would look and feel. It'll be different, but it's not impossible. And also, it's something we can build. It's not something that somebody 40, 50 years ago built without our approval. This is something we can help to create. If we help to create it, we can make it right. So when people say that the police are quitting, I want you to understand something. Police are feeling the crisis, they're feeling the pressure. And when people say the police are quitting their jobs, I want you to understand something. Some of those very police that are quitting their jobs, they're quitting their jobs because they know if their records would be searched, if their records would be scrutinized right now, they'd probably be fired, and more than that, they'd probably end up in jail themselves. This is David Lucas, and this is In the News. Thank you for being here with me.